Yeah, good morning again. I'm Udayan Borthakur from Aaranyak. So we are going to start with today's webinar to be delivered by Dr. Bibhab Kumar Talukdar. It's on wildlife crime, current scenarios, as well as global, as well as the Northeast perspective.
Okay, very good morning and welcome back to our webinar. So I will be basically focusing today's talk on the current scenarios of wildlife crime in global and local perspective. I understand, we have today participants attending this webinar from some of the South and Southeast Asian countries, including from the European countries. So, wildlife trade, why it is important, why we should be concerned about, because it is the fourth largest illegal trade in the world after narcotics, arms, and human trafficking. It's an illegal trade of about 23 billion US dollar. Northeast India is an important area because many traditional species are found here. And since we have a lot of porous international border, Northeast India is being used actively by the international gang of smugglers associated with the illegal wildlife trade. Some of the species which are affected by the wildlife trade from the Northeast Indian perspective includes elephant, rhino, tiger, leopard, bear, otter, primates, pangolins, reptiles, birds, amphibians. So almost all, if you can see, but some of them are since fetching more money in the illegal markets. So focus is on, especially on the larger animals, but also the smaller animals, which I will be delivering upon. Now, if you see the global map, the illegal wildlife trade is happening wherever the wildlife are obviously more. And if you can see, these, I will just use my pointers so that if you see, as I mentioned, this is the fourth. The first one is this, the drug trafficking, also the counterfeit, drug trafficking, human and illegal wildlife trades. So illegal wildlife trade, human trafficking, switches in between 3 and 4 or 4 and 3 with regards to the largest illegal global trade. So wildlife, and unfortunately till now, hasn't got that much priority, from all law enforcement point of view, from the public awareness point of view. So that is why we should be concerned about the illegal wildlife trade. Now let us focus on the African situation. We have 5 species of rhinos. 2 species are found in Africa, 3 species are found in Asia. And if we see in Africa, South, especially the South Africa, South Africa is not a very, poor country compared to other African countries. But if we see from, 2011, 2012 onwards, if we see this figure, in 2013 until 2017, almost every year, the orange mark is basically rhino killed in South Africa alone. 1,000 rhinos every year, in between 2013 to 2017. It has declined a little bit in last few years, in last couple of years. But, this population of killing 1,000 means every day, 3 rhinos are being killed, targeted. So that reflects how organized this crime could be. And that is the reason why we are concerned in Asian countries. Our rhino populations are not like that of the African rhino population. Africa had a rhino population about 20,000 white rhinos, 5,000 plus black rhinos. But if we talk about our rhinos, let us see what is our population. But before that, let us also look at the global map. If you see, the major countries where the ultimate wildlife trades, are flourishing is China. Vietnam is another country. In between, Malaysia also act like major transit countries. Some sort of trades are also going on. There's a global map being prepared. This is in a CITES report. So you can see the Southeast Asia, is an important, part of this whole illegal wildlife, trafficking. And that is where all of us, we need to be concerned. We need to play our role, whether it's as a citizens, as a responsible citizens, to ensure that this illegal wildlife trade is checked so that the wildlife can be protected. Now, as I mentioned, compared to 20,000 white rhinos in Africa, what is our population? Javan rhino, 72 to 73. Remember, I mentioned in South Africa, in a year alone, 1,000 rhinos are killed. 72, 73 is tiny population. So if such a pressure from South Africa shifts to country like where we have, the German rhino, or even the Sumatran rhino. The Sumatran rhino population is only 80. This can go at no point of time, probably in few weeks, maybe in few months, if that pressure comes. So that's why the enforcement agencies, conservation organization engage with wildlife conservation protection and the general public too need to voice their concern and help assist the government agencies to put their full force in order to check the illegal wildlife trade. Now, with regards to greater one-horned rhino, which is found in India and Nepal, our population is now close to 3,600. But illegal hunting is one of the major threats to the rhinos. Rhinos are being killed for its horn, and that is why it is a very conservation and protection dependent. As soon as protection is compromised, the illegal wildlife smugglers or poachers will hunt these animals as rapid as possible. What are the other tradable species? Tiger is one of the species which have been highly traded. We all know the population has declined all over the world. In India also, compared to in 1970s, population declined, but then of late, because of stringent protection measures, at least in the tiger reserve areas, we can see the tiger populations are slowly increasing. So tigers are killed, and this is a species, when it is killed, nothing left as evidence. Everything is taken away. If a poacher or hunter kills a rhino for its horn or an elephant for its tusk, carcass remains. The carcass can be detected probably in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. So based on that, it can be put into the record. If the horns are missing, probably in terms of rhino, is a possible rhino poaching case. If horn is intact with the carcass, then probably it could be a natural death. So at least the records are being maintained because they get some sort of evidence. In case of tigers, nothing remains. Everything goes, skins, bones, everything. So in record, when nothing is detected, obviously in the record it will come nothing detected. So we only get to know about tiger, being hunted when there is seizure, there is recovery. If we recover two skins, we assume that two tigers got killed. So that is why this is an important species which is going silently from little less protected areas. Even in the protected areas too, the systematic efforts by the smugglers and the wildlife traffickers are trying their level best to kill. So that is where protection is important. Awareness among the communities are important. And especially for India, it is an issue. It is of a prestige issue for every Indian because this is the national animal of India. We have to protect. We have to help the government agencies to keep our national animal protected. Not only that, the big animals are being traded. Even small animals, birds, are being traded. A lot of birds gets, they die during this trafficking because the traffickers knows this is illegal, business. So they try to take as many birds in a small cages. And most of the birds, at least 80% of the birds, dies during the transit because of suffocation. There are species like geckos are being traded. So the traders, the illegal wildlife traders, are focusing everywhere. If they are successful in killing rhinos, they will continue. But if they are not successful in killing rhinos or tigers or other big animals, they are concentrating on other smaller species. That is why, as a concerned citizens, our ears, eyes needs to be wider open so that we can gather the key informations, help the enforcement agencies in order to curb this illegal wildlife trade. A lot of species are being killed. This is unfortunately during the lockdown period. During the lockdown period also, the hunters are not sitting idle. They are not maintaining the lockdown. They are trying to kill, not trying, they have killed animals by going into the forest. Now let's see a lot of the brushes that we use. Because of unawareness, we never asked from which material these brushes are made. Most of these brushes are made from the hairs of the mongoose. So if people are aware, then we can save the species. That is where the awareness is very important. Now, nowhere rhino or its horns are safe. It's not that protected areas, means national parks or wildlife sanctuaries, are being targeted by the wildlife smugglers. They are also targeting to take the rhino horns from the museums. And they were quite successful during 2011 to 2013. Over 90 rhino horns from different museums in Europe. When we talk about Europe, we have an assumption and belief that their security systems, their protection systems are much better. But despite those security measures in place, almost over 90 rhino horns were stolen from the museums. So nowhere rhino or its horns are safe, whether it is in museum, whether it is in national park or wildlife sanctuary. Now, Vietnam emerging as a key market, if we see in last 10 to 15 years time. There are a lot of wildlife products are being sold very openly in Vietnam. One of the reasons why perhaps the Vietnam is emerging as an important market, because the economic activities in Vietnam has grown over the years. There are a lot of rich people. There are buyers. And then also, probably some countries want to uplift the face value of that country, and also may trying to encourage Vietnam to engage in this illegal trade. Now, if we see even in northeastern India, as I mentioned, now this is a tigers being killed, and the bones and the skins was recovered. Only then we got to know that one tiger got killed. Because as I mentioned, nothing remained in the field. So that is why the key developing and maintaining a good intelligence network for the enforcement agencies are very important. More and more, the information base and information network is stringent and effective. More and more prior informations can be derived, based on which the enforcement agencies can act before probably these poachers can take lives of our wild animals. So that is why the information network, intelligence gathering is very important to check illegal wildlife trade. You can see this here, some of the arms and ammunition being recovered by police. And this shows that the poachers are heavily armed nowadays. The concept of poachers or the hunters 20 years, 30 years back had changed. 20 years, 30 years back, the so-called hunters comes with handmade gun. But in the current situations, they comes with very sophisticated weapons. And the so-called normal hunters from a village cannot afford to procure such sophisticated weapons unless these people are being supported by organized gang of criminals. And that is why the illegal wildlife trade is becoming an important issue for, for all of us, and especially for the security agencies to check it. Again, I am showing some of the recovered items, which has been recovered by the enforcement agencies in various parts of Northeast India of late. So enforcement agencies are also successful in detecting the illegal arms which are being used by the wildlife criminals. Now, why rhino poaching bothers us? Because its impact on the rhino population. If our rhino population is small and poachers kill, say, more female rhinos, that will create an imbalance. The frontline forest staff who work day and night, 24/7, even during this lockdown period, the frontline forest staffs are working day and night in the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries to protect the wildlife for all of us. I salute them for their dedicated service. So when the poaching takes place, people often forgets the good work being rendered by the frontline foresters for months. If tomorrow there is a hunting of rhino or poaching of rhino, most of us probably will blame the frontline foresters. So that demoralizes them. Impact on overall conservation. If every now and then the wildlife are being hunted, rhinos, tigers, elephants are being hunted, it gives a very bad impression that perhaps, that the government agencies or the state as a whole could not actively protect their wildlife resources. But what is important, it puts added pressure on the police. And what we have seen over the years in Northeast India, especially in Assam, it has become an important issue with regards to national security. Why it has become an important issue with regards to national security is because of the flow of illegal arms. There are records of late which was been investigated by different investigation agencies, enforcement agencies, where in some cases, rhino horns are also being traded in exchange of illegal arms. So this is a very important issue. The rhino horn protection should not be just the responsibility of forest or wildlife. It has to be a shared responsibility of all the enforcement agencies, because, as I mentioned, the flow of illegal arms are coming from a country where our rhino horns grows. So that's why we have to be very careful, and that is where, the enforcement agencies need to work very in hand in hand to complement each other. This is the graph of rhino being hunted in Assam. It has increased, in 2012 to about 40 to about 41. But again, because of the proactive measures initiated by the Assam government, the police has been activated. Special task force of Assam police has been engaged by our government, and that is why you can see, and of course, the positive roles and the proactive roles being played by the frontline forest staff. You can see the rhino poaching graph has declined, and last year only 3 rhinos were killed by the hunters. What we are doing as a responsible organization, we are trying to complement the effort of the enforcement agency. We have trained about 7 Belgian Malinois sniffer dogs, and we have given for the service of national parks in Assam. And this has helped, because dog has the sniffing powers, and it has given vital clues, and forest and police could nab the suspect. So these are the tools that can be used, and as a responsible citizen, as a responsible organization, we are trying to complement the effort of the government agencies to curb this illegal wildlife trade. These are some of the pictures of our canine sniffer dog units being trained in different localities. keeping in mind that they will be deployed in the forest areas. We are also engaging ourselves with some orientation program, some discussions program with police officials, with the judiciary officials, and with the forest officers whenever the opportunity arises. Of late, we are working closely with the Assam State Legal Service Authority to organize jointly a day-long workshop for the in-service judicial officials on wildlife crime prevention. We are also working, to sensitize the enforcement agencies by doing legal orientation program, by providing some important equipment, those are needed in the field in order to effectively use those tools and those supports by the enforcement agencies to carry out their services unabated. Recently, we also organized a big workshop in Golaghat district of Assam where the judges from 7 districts of Eastern Assam participated on wildlife crime prevention. I was lucky to be part of a committee of the rhino horn, evaluation in different treasuries, and based on that, experience, it is very good that the rhino horn can be identified very easily. And I'm providing, my experience to the enforcement agencies whenever the need arises. I basically request them to send the photos, and I help them whether the rhino horns could be original or it could be fake. Not only big animals, even snakes are traded, for the skins. There are, so skins are being traded like different kind of cats. You can see this is a primates being killed, and see, the kind of, the arms being used by the modern, the hunters or the poachers. So we have to do justice for our future generation. We have to protect their right to see these animals alive. And that's why we are trying our level best. We are engaging, working with the village defense patrol parties who are reporting to the police authorities, providing them the needed field gears like raincoats, shoes, torchlights, so that they can be proactively used by the police and other enforcement agencies. Beside the other crimes, also, gathering informations and intelligence with regards to wildlife killing. We are also doing a lot of awareness programs at different level, engaging the local police and forest officials. Now, of late, we are talking about Corona, the COVID. And of course, some of the wildlife may be the reservoir of diseases, but it is not spread unless and until we humans consume those animals. So let us not consume. That is where the awareness is very important. If we are aware, we can stop not only the illegal wildlife trade, but also spread of many new known and unknown diseases. We have to be very careful. Thank you very much for your kind attention. We may have some time now for some questions and answers.
If the political involvement is not at all seen, can we expect that wildlife crime may be decreased either in global or local scenario?
Well, I think the political will is very important, and I already mentioned that fortunately in Assam we have seen a strong political commitment of the government. We have seen how the rhino poaching increased to 41 in 2012, and because of the proactive support of the government, the strength of the frontline staff has been almost doubled in national parks like Kaziranga since 2012. So that commitment is very important. I think political will is very important. That also encourages the frontline staff, the forest officials, the police officers, and also the common citizens, in order to ensure the safety and security of our wild animals.
The next question is, what sort of policies are being implemented by our government to save rhinos?
Well, the Wildlife Protection Act, which is a central act, was enacted in 1972. That gives protection to most of the important species which are enlisted in Schedule 1. Assam government, as I mentioned, took an extra precautions or extra steps ahead by amending that national Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 in 2009 by increasing the punishment. So if a person hunts a rhino or a tiger, schedule 1 species in Assam, the punishment is more compared to the rest of India, which is a very good step taken by the Assam government. So Assam government has increased the punishment. Now the minimum punishment is 7 years for killing a species like rhino or tigers. So when the minimum punishment is 7 years, the case is now being treated at the session judge court, which is being now heard by the additional session judge. And so these are very important steps that has been taken. And as a policy matters, as I mentioned, rhino is our state animal. Everywhere, I think, even in West Bengal, are also doing pretty good with regards to rhino protections, since it's a protection-dependent species. So I think policy-wise, governments are taking good steps. But I think there are a lot of scopes to improve, especially strengthening the second line of defense. Those are the communities, working closely with communities so as to get their proactive support or continue to get their proactive support. Communities are playing also a very important role. So I think it is the combined responsibilities of the governments and the citizens to ensure that our wildlife.
So the next question is, if we see the timeline of poaching and arrest is so less. Why is the lake, or where is the lake? Sorry.
Well, I won't say arrest is very less, but sometimes this is also like a interstate kind of network. Most of the rhinos being hunted. The main hunters comes from other states. So, a lot of time, Assam government also needs to be dependent on the cooperations from the other states as well. So I think arrest has been made. Even in last 3 weeks time, there are at least 6 or 7 suspects were arrested who tried to kill a stray rhino in Kaziranga National Park. Arrests are being made, but I think the conviction rate is little less, and that is where the government is also focusing. We as an NGO also trying to focus how best this legal system, using the existing legal systems, conviction can be enhanced, and that's why we are organizing a lot of legal orientation programs for workshops for the enforcement agencies, and also interaction with the judiciaries, with a primary aim to increase the rate of conviction. Things are changing. Even the High Court has designated 16 district courts in Assam as the fast track court to exclusively deal with wildlife crimes hearing. So the hearing process is becoming faster. So the state government also knows, the challenges. They are also trying their level best. We are also trying to complement the effort of the government so that the conviction rate could be increased.
Yeah. Next question is again related to the conviction rate only. So despite stricter law and punishment measures, why conviction rate is very low in wildlife crime?
Well, I think this is where I personally feel the forest department, which is have more advantages in filing a direct complaint cases. They are officers above the assistant conservator of forest are being treated as semi-judiciary officers. That means a statement given or recorded by an officer of assistant conservator of forests is admissible in court of law, which is not in the case of police officers. So those advantages needs to be used by forest department proactively. The complaint case has to be filed properly so that the judiciaries can act. But that is where the important role of the public prosecutor comes, because all government cases are generally routed through the public prosecutor. Or forest department can think, especially in certain district where the cases, the wildlife crime cases are more, to engage their own the advocates who knows much more about the Wildlife Protection Acts and different sections, taking the view approval of the government. because placing, the evidences and arguing in the court is very important. Arrest is just a preliminary stage to go for the next round, that is the conviction. So evidence gathering, arguing in the court, which needs to be done by professional lawyers. So that is where I think government needs to focus on. I personally feel, governments, because the public prosecutors are engaged by governments, they also need to be evaluated. How many cases they have been able to uplift, the sanctity of the governments, and how many cases they fail. Failure and success are part of life, but then I think some sort of assessment has to be done.
Next question is, we can see over the last decades, lots of encroachment, even the tea gardens are seen to be growing, has taken place into the protected areas. What steps have been taken or what can be done?
Well, I think encroachment is a major issue in Assam. If we see in the forest areas, almost 15 to 20% forest areas are being encroached. So encroachment means it is illegal. So this is an issue where I think wider support from the administration, from the political leaderships and political parties are important. Because unfortunately our wildlife cannot give votes, but people can. So most of the time, perhaps the decision makers, giving more weightage to the people, which is fine. But then we also need to realize that for whom these wildlife or wild habitats are being protected. Is it for the forest officials, or it is for the human race? So that is why I think this wider awareness is important, and enforcement issues definitely needs a priority, action plan for the governments, to clear some of the important, areas which also part of the critical wildlife.
Thank you. Now, I think we have almost through with the time that has been allowed. We have less than 1 minute left. So I would have to end the meeting. I would like to thank the speaker as well as all the participants for joining with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.